Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Elektra, we are actually going to pick back up with the 2001 series again. Now, technically, we're at the point where Greg Rucka is no longer the writer of the series. He did a small run on the character, which honestly was a great run, but after he left, Marvel wanted to continue the book. And so we had a new writer step in, and that was Robert Roddy. Now, Robert Roddy was not really trying to follow what Greg did with the actual character. Instead, it was Robert saying, let's take Elektra back to what she was, an assassin, a killer. She loves the idea of going after her different targets. And so, in his first two-part story arc, he kind of shows us that he is not going to follow Greg Rucka's work at all. And the reason why I'm saying that because the two-part story arc is actually called The Mark and the Job. Now, the two-part story arc is more like a POV situation where the first chapter, we actually see the POV of somebody being hunted down by Elektra, while the second chapter is the POV of her doing the hunting. It really shows that Roddy is not trying to follow Greg's work at all and bring Elektra back in the line of being an assassin who takes different jobs to kill off different people across the world. And so, getting into the opening pages of today's story arc, we actually do pick up with a character known as Mr. Preble. Now, Mr. Preble is going to be our POV character and kind of show us what it feels like to be hunted down by Elektra across the world. Now, by this point, we actually see Mr. Preble going to some building that he owns, but apparently he had hired a security team that could hopefully protect him from Elektra. Now, we do learn the actual leader's name of this crew, and his name is Bauer. Now, Bauer is not really going to be that important for today's story arc, but he is going to be around and kind of help us see why Mr. Preble had officially given up when it comes to trying to get away from Elektra. Because once you have Preble go inside the actual building, you have Bauer say, okay, so you know what? We made sure the entire place is locked down. We got a plan to protect you. Like, all you need to do is stay in this room right here, but stay away from the windows. And also make sure you don't drink anything. But for Mr. Preble, he's kind of like, listen, I've been on the run for a good while now. And I'm going to tell you right now, no matter what you do, you can't stop her. And matter of fact, you are the first team I hired to actually protect me. I had hired other people to protect me earlier, but they all had failed when it came to protecting me. Now, for Bauer, he's kind of like, what do you mean? And this leads into Mr. Preble kind of telling us about each team he hired to protect him from Elektra and how they all had failed. Now, here's the thing. You see, you have Mr. Preble actually tell us that he had hired 14 different crew to protect him from Elektra in the last 6 days. But apparently, in those 6 days, she had killed off every single member of all those different crews who are trying to stop her. Now, when it comes to Preble, he's going to give us some different examples, but the key one kind of showed him that Elektra is an unstoppable force. And the reason why I'm saying that because the first example he gives us that he had basically hired a guy known as Trask. And when it came to Trask, he realized the best way to actually protect him from Elektra was to build a safe room. Now, this safe room only had one way in, the front door, or the main door, sorry. But the main door also had some high-tech security on it to keep people out. And there was no vents to use to sneak into the actual room. And so to Trask and also Preble, they believed they had the best game plan to stop Elektra. But apparently she was able to break into that facility, find a safe room, break open the door, kill off Trask. But luckily for Trask, he was able to grab Preble and tell him to get away while Elektra, well, killed him off. And that leads into the next example of Elektra hunting him down and killing off another crew. Now, the second example he gives us is that after he had lost that crew he had with Trask, he hired somebody else that was actually very close to Bauer. Not really close, but Bauer actually knew the guy. And for Bauer, he's kind of like, if you hire this friend of mine, then that means you hire someone really great. and you should have been well protected. But you have Preble say, yeah, I was not really that well protected like we had thought because he then went to a different property that he had owned. Now, this property had a bunch of tunnels underneath it. Now, here's the thing. There's only one way to get out of the tunnels up into the actual house, a freight elevator that leads into the garage of the actual house. And so for Mr. Preble and the crew he hired that time, they believe that there's only one way in. That means they can guard that one way to keep her out. But the problem is, though, that means there's only one way out of the actual facility if things go south. But also the caves. If you cannot see in the caves, it makes you an easy target for Elektra. And so for Preble, he tells us that the guy he hired for that situation right there, they were all killed off in a matter of seconds. And luckily, once again, he was able to get away to hopefully hire another crew. And like I said, he's been on the run for 6 days and went through 14 different crews to protect him from Elektra. And that leads into the moment where you have Preble actually tell Bauer who is chasing him down, that it is actually Elektra. And that kind of shows us that Bauer took the job because, well, it's good money. But at the same time, he had no idea who he was trying to protect Preble from. And so now he knows, he's kind of like, wait a second. I'm guarding you from Elektra. Now, to Bauer and his crew, they can't believe that he's being chased down by Elektra because it seems that most people in Marvel Comics believe that Elektra is dead. Like she is basically a myth because she died a few years back, not really knowing that actually she's alive again and well, she's chasing him down. Now, for Mr. Preble, he's kind of like, no, she is not a myth. I have seen her in action. I have seen what she has done to all those past crew. And I'm telling you right now, even though you believe that you're the best kind of crew that I had hired, I'm telling you right now, you and your crew are going to die. You and your crew are going to fail because nothing can truly stop her. Now, the ending of this chapter is really more of Bauer and Preble both realizing that the entire plan that Bauer had put together as a way to protect Preble from Elektra is falling apart in a matter of minutes. And the reason why, because she's already there. She's already killing off different crew members that belong to Bauer's crew. She's already dismantling other things he set up to hopefully protect Preble from her. Now, for Preble, he's kind of like, listen, it's too late. And I realized after 6 days of running, there's no point of me running anymore because she is not going to give up. And sooner or later, she is going to kill me off. And so you have Preble tell Bauer, you're fired. Like, I want to make sure that you actually survive. So get out of here now. Go home to your wife, your girlfriend, or your kids, whatever, but you have been officially fired. Now, for Bauer, he's not trying to give up. Matter of fact, he's saying, listen, you gave me this job. I'm going to make sure I actually finish the job. But you didn't have Preble trick Bauer out of the room and lock the door behind him. And he says, no, you have been fired. Get the heck out of here before she appears. Now, while you have Bauer trying to get back into the room with Preble, Elektra does appear, but she let Bauer go. And after letting him go, she goes into the room to kill off Mr. Preble. Now, as she does walk into the room, he does offer her a drink, and really, we don't see her take that drink at the end of this chapter, but the next one. But either way, as she does walk into the room to kill him off, we kind of end the whole POV for Mr. Preble to kind of see what it was like to be hunted down by Elektra for 6 days straight, to kind of realize that almost everything you try to stop her was not going to work at all. Now, the next chapter, like I said earlier, is going to be her POV, what it's like to be the hunter, not the hunted. But either way, at the end of this chapter, we do see her killing off Mr. Preble. And so as we get into Elektra issue number 24, we actually pick up with Elektra working as a stripper. Yeah, you heard that right. She's working as a stripper. Now, the reason why, because, well, one of her targets, or two of her targets, are in that strip club. And the best way to get close to them is to pretend to be an actual stripper. And so, literally, by the end of the section, we see her get the jump on them while she was mid dancing as a stripper, pulls her weapons out, and kills them off just like that. And like I said earlier, this chapter really does focus more on Elektra's POV, what it's like to be the hunter. And so we actually see Elektra at an airport, and we see her being able to receive a job from a monk. Now, at first, it did seem like the monk was just a regular monk who was just passing out stuff about his lifestyle. But after she passes him, we see that she had received a package. Inside that package is information about her next job. And then we see her fly over to New York to take care of her next job. And so, with this chapter really focusing more on Elektra's POV, we're going to see what it was like for her to hunt down Mr. Preble from the last chapter. Now, in the first section for him in this chapter, we actually see him on the phone still freaking out about the idea that he's being hunted down by Elektra. And really, this section right here kind of shows most basic kind of protection. Just two guys outside his actual door while he's on the phone with the boss of the actual crew. But anyways, you have Elektra take those guards out so easily. By the time she finishes them off, when she looks up, he's on the run again. And it kind of shows her kind of like, okay, you got away this time, but I'll still be on your trail. And sooner or later, I'm going to get the chance to actually kill you off. Now, let's not forget that in the last chapter, Mr. Preble gave us some examples of what different crews try to do to protect him from Elektra. Like, for example, the guy known as Trask. Now, when it came to Trask, he believed that the best way to protect Preble was to build a safe room. And his safe room or panic room will only have one door, only one way into the actual room, that one door. And the thing is, that door would have some high-tech security to keep people out. If you add some guards around the door and outside the actual building completely, then most likely Elektra would not get over to Preble. Now, as we all know, in the last chapter, that plan did not work out at all because we saw in the last chapter or heard from Preble that Trask's plan failed completely, that Elektra was able to get through his actual plan. And so we see in this section that Trask's plan falls apart very quickly. And you have Elektra just killing off all these guards, including being able to get through that one door that leads into the panic room. Now, because Trask was inside the panic room with Preble, he was able to kind of keep Elektra busy long enough to allow Preble to actually escape, to go on to his next plan of hiding from Elektra. Now, like we saw in the last chapter, Preble gave us another example of the idea that he had a house somewhere, and that house had tunnels running underneath it. Now, to Preble, he said the next guy he hired after Trask believed that those tunnels could be used as a way to stop Elektra because there's only one way in and out of the actual tunnels, a freight elevator that leads up into the actual, house. The problem was, though, for Elektra, she was able to get into the tunnels, and because she's able to see better in the dark than the guards can, she was able to take out all the guards just like that, including the actual leader of the crew. And so by the time we get to the end of this section, the entire crew is killed off in the tunnels or outside the actual house. So she was able to sneak into the tunnels. And so you have Preble find the entire crew dead, and he dips out, trying to get away from her once again. And so then we get another page to remind us that for Preble, he was on the run for many, many days, for many hours, with different crews, just trying his best to get away from Elektra, leading up to the moment where he was then being protected by Bauer and his crew, like we saw in the last chapter. And so that leads us into the ending of this story arc, where you do have Elektra being able to arrive the island that Bauer was trying to use as a way to protect Preble. As we all know, Elektra arrived on the island as well, and she began killing off all the different guards, leading up into the moment where she walks in the room, she finds Preble, she kills him, And like I said in the last chapter, we do see her get that drink that he offered her after she had killed him off. And so the book kind of ends on that note because she goes back to the airport and we see her walk by the same monk once again, where she does receive another package from that monk. And of course, it gives her her next assignment. And this time, she's going to London. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.